scarf this time. I like the audio quality of plugging in my Sony lav mic into the road. Just need to deal with a little bit of wind. So we're gonna wear a scarf. This scarf is non-political. It is purely to block wind, and it's cotton, so it's light and doesn't get too hot. So I'm gonna go down for a coffee with a friend, and I'm gonna go down Grote Road, which is a popular road for motorcyclists. I don't like it for motorcycles. It's not a good road. The drivers that go on there have varying intentions. Some of them think it's a speedway. Others think that they could just stay on their phones live streaming Instagram or whatever they do, talk to their friends. But people have died on that stretch of Grote Road. I'll show you why when we get there. This is going to be a bit of a low-speed city ride. I've done this ride before on this bike, on this vlog, as part of my my break-in process videos, riding low speeds and getting good opportunities to break in the clutch and the engine at varying speeds and transmission at varying gears, and the brakes as well. A little bit of light stopping here and there. I've got a few topics that I sort of brainstormed or shortlisted for my vlog, and one of them, what I'll do is I'll talk about what is a slow bike. Have the habit of twitching my throttle, which I get from my old carbureted bikes. Sometimes when the carbs aren't tuned well, or you've got a vacuum leak or something, I just kind of want to prime the carbs a little bit before I take off. You don't need to do that for fuel injection. Crossing or not? I think it does. Construction season. So the topic was what are slow bikes? Well, I'll go back to where I started on motorcycles, so you have an understanding of where I'm coming from. And I'll just say right from the beginning, I don't think I've ever really ridden a bike that I would say is commonly agreed upon as fast. As in, I've never ridden like a CBR or R1, a Gixxer, a Hayabusa, like nothing like that. So I started learning how to ride a motorcycle in 2007. And I was in India at the time, and my cousins had a TVS Apache 150. 150 cc's and Bajaj Pulsar 180, 180 cc's, and then a Royal Enfield Bullet 500. So I think the TVS made something like 14 horsepower. It's a tiny bike. And I had probably the worst start to a motorcycling hobby on that bike. I thought it would have a lot more torque than it did, and I could not get it going in first gear. It just kept stalling, and the engine kept locking up, so the tires would skid, and it was just not a very pleasant experience for learning. You really had to drag the clutch and rev the engine high just to get going. So, is that a slow bike? Yes, 100%. That is a slow bike. It is okay to call a bike slow. And anyway, I learned on this 150cc bike. Then my cousin let me try his 180cc, marginally more powerful. And then when I went to Goa for a week to visit my uncle and aunt, I absolutely insisted on, I was supposed to turn left there. Absolutely insisted on renting a motorcycle. Anyway, there was a funny story with that, and it happened. Finally, I rented a motorcycle. I really wanted a Royal Enfield because that was the thing, when you look up motorcycling in India, it's rent a Royal Enfield, and Goa was one of the places that's popular for renting Royal Enfields. So anyway, it was monsoon season. I only got out on one day that week that I was visiting my uncle, so that had to be the day. And Goa's a touristy town, so they know who you are, and they're very smart over there. Speak many languages because of all the tourism, and they can spot you. And on top of that, they know that you're Indian, but a foreign Indian. So they'll mess around with you just a little bit, just to keep you on edge. But anyway, it's all fun. So I was asking around, like, where can I rent a Royal Enfield, and it was late in the day, getting close to siesta, and there was nobody available. So out of nowhere, some random guy just pulls up and says, "Hey, I heard you're looking to rent a motorcycle. Come with me." So, okay. So I get in his car. He takes me to some random person's house and says, "Here, you can take my bike." It was a Bajaj Pulsar, but a 150cc. So cool, whatever. I'll take anything at this point. I don't care if it's a Royal Enfield or not. And just to be clear, at the time I also didn't have a motorcycle license in Canada. I just learned how to ride a few weeks prior, and then decided I wanted to rent one. So I paid some guy, like, I don't know, 400 rupees at the time. said, if the cops stop you, the insurance papers are under the seat, and when you show them your ID, just put a 100 rupee note in there and you'll be fine. So I had no helmet, no riding gear, I was just wearing a t-shirt and jeans, running shoes. And yeah, anyway, I just sent it up and down all the beach roads on this bike. Did not go do any sightseeing or visit any museums or anything. I just wanted to just ride the bike. That's all I cared about. And I had a blast. I think like the most I got that bike up to was 80 kilometers per hour, and that took a while. Was that a slow bike? Yeah, it definitely was a slow bike. And could you do irresponsible things on it? Yes, you could. And without a helmet or even sunglasses, 80 kilometers is irresponsible. Anyway, so that was 2007, and then fast forward to 2014, then I'm going back to Goa for my cousin's wedding, same cousin. And this time I was more determined to find a Royal Enfield. So in the hotel we were staying at, they had a guy who had a shop in the hotel compound where he was renting out motorcycles. And there were Enfields there when I said I really wanted one. Someone's honking. Maybe the bug. It's another beetle in Edmonton. Anyway, so he says, no, Royal Enfields are sold out right now. And I said, well, I really want one. So he said, okay, just give me some time and figure it out. And then after a couple of days, he said, okay, I found one for you. It's not in good shape, but you wanted an Enfield. I said, yeah, sure. So I got a Bullet 500. It wasn't very old, meaning the shift lever was on the left and the brake was on the right. So at least I didn't have to get used to that. You know, I rode that around for I think a week or so. I had it, and I took every opportunity I could to get on the bike. Because again, it's 2014. I still don't have a motorcycle license in Canada, nor a motorcycle. But anyway, I had a blast on that Enfield, and you know, is it a slow bike? Sort of. The 500 is a little bit better, and you can get around, you know, all of India with a 500, and in Canada you can get around with a 500 as well. You just might have some issues here and there in the prairies when it's just, you know, a straight flat road like Highway 2. The speed limit's 110, so everybody's doing 90 in the right lane and 140 in the left lane. So that's the real issue. It's not a slow bike, but the way people drive is you need a lot of power up top in the rev range. If you need to get around somebody and there's, you know, a 50 kilometer speed differential between the right lane and the left lane. So yeah, you know, Royal Enfield is a good fun motorcycle. You'll have a blast with it. I'm talking about just the Bullets, the singles. I haven't been on any of the new ones, the twins. Fast forward to 2015. Whitecourt, and allegedly there's a meteorite crater on Whitecourt Mountain that I want to see, but it's a difficult dirt trail to get up there. So a friend of mine says he'll take me up. He's got a quad and a dirt bike. And he's got a Honda CR80R. That's the orange one that I used to own. I've got a brief clip with it here, and that thing makes like 20 horsepower, I think, if it's all in good condition, out of an 80cc engine. And it had this like power band thing that Honda did pre-VTEC, and that bike scared me. And it weighed nothing. I think it weighed like maybe 200 pounds, and it would make that 20 horsepower at something insane, like 18,000 RPMs, and it would just take off on you. First gear, it wasn't really going anywhere, but second, third, fourth, fifth, it would just fly when you got the revs up. So, you know, at 20 horsepower, is that a slow bike? Absolutely not. That thing ripped. I have no clue what top speed I ever did on it or could do, but you had to hold on. It was fast, it was loud, and it was a blast. And I'd only ridden a bike, you know, twice, 2 or 3 times prior to that. Dropped at lots, crashed at lots, got, you know, launched off the dirt trail lots, but I still had a blast. Made it up the mountain on the dirt bike, came down on the quad. Didn't like quads, still preferred dirt bikes. And then I told a friend of mine that, you know, I really want to get my license, and he said, well, he's got a Kawasaki KLR 650 that I could borrow and do my license on. So I went out for a ride with him. That bike's a fun bike. I really like the single 650. I think it made like just over 40 horsepower, probably the same, almost the same amount of power as this W800 out of a single. If you want to complain about bikes that vibrate too much, that 650 vibrates a lot when you're on the highway. It's way too tall and way too heavy for me. When you get on it though, you're so high up, you have a really great view of the road and surroundings, and don't doubt that that would be a great touring bike. And it's such a simple motorcycle. The gauges were all still analog. I think it was still carbureted. Chain, disc brakes, and I can't remember if it's air-cooled or liquid-cooled, but I know it has a fan on it that would turn on, because my right leg would periodically get warm. So I did my license on that bike, and I've been on one another time. A coworker needed help moving his 650, so I jumped on it and rode it around a neighborhood. That's a good putting around bike, but just still too tall for me and too heavy for me. Or at least I should say where the weight is on that bike is it's very high up. So I've been on a variety of lower power, lower cc bikes, but I've also owned 3 Honda CBs. My first was a CB550. That bike was a blast. It was the perfect size. Wasn't too powerful, so I put these Dunlop K70 tires on it. Those were great. So I could go on all the gravel roads everywhere. And when I used to work at the newspaper, and every time there was a fire, I would show up on that bike because I would take it everywhere. And I developed a reputation at the fire department as the journalist that would always just show up out of nowhere on a motorcycle. So I bought that in 2015. Then I bought the Honda CB750, the Nighthawk that I still have. That makes about 75 horsepower, maybe 45 foot-pounds of torque. That bike I call the Goldilocks bike. It's got way more power than you'd need. It's still good if you've got a passenger on it or some luggage. It's an easy bike to ride, easy bike to maintain. The CB550, yes, it made 50 horsepower at something like 9,000 RPMs, but once you had any weight on it or a second passenger, you weren't really going anywhere in a rush. The 750 is just fine. Then briefly was bored during COVID times and had nowhere to go and nothing to do, so I bought a CB900 Custom. It's a 1982. It was a fixer-upper, wasn't running. When I picked it up from the guy, I paid him like $600. Ended up putting in, over the years, about maybe $2,500 or $3,000 roughly into parts and tires. That's the second bike that scared me or terrified me. CR80R and then the CB900 Custom. I think that thing made something like 85 horsepower and you had to hold on. It was a long wheelbase, had air suspension front and back, shaft drive with a dual range transmission, and it was just like a freight train. It was long, it was smooth, it was great on highways, it was heavy. I totally stripped off all the fairings and made it into just a naked bike. Anyway, here we're at the part of Grote Road that people love for motorcycling. And I'll tell you why it's dangerous. One is you've got these, the guardrail on the right, which is essentially just one long razor blade. If you hit that, it's like a bandsaw. It just slices you into tiny pieces. Then you've got potholes galore and a school bus on my left here, which is a long straight line trying to go down a curvy road. And then you've got those cement barriers which have a little bit of a ramp at the bottom. And that's the ramp that when people hit that, it launches you head first into the school bus that's oncoming, and that's how you die. And someone in my office died a couple of years ago on this, so it's not worth trying to sit down this. The speed limit's 50 also. And that's about it for turns in Edmonton. Around here there's a number of cloverleaf type of highways to get in and around these roads, or not highways, but on-ramps and off-ramps, and people use these to zip around. But you've got pedestrians and strollers, and worst of all, you've got cyclists, especially right after this turn. There's a crossing here where the cyclists just don't even stop. They come down the hill on the left. So you have to be ready to jam on your brakes. Then there's somebody here trying to join the road. It's the worst place to either, have some fun riding or mentally check out and have a relaxing ride. Constantly vigilant. Anyway, so I've ridden a few singles, small dirt bike, a few inline fours. I sold the CB900 Custom. The thing was way too much power for what I need or want, and I was just tired of always having to fix it up. It was a neglected bike. But I've kept the CB750. Can't seem to let that one go. That's like my Goldilocks bike, I call it. It also has a backrest and a luggage rack, and every time I've taken a passenger, they all love the backrest comfort and for a sense of security. Any passenger I had on the 550 or the 900 was not comfortable. And then in my process of trying to get a newer bike, I briefly had the Moto Guzzi V72 Special. That bike was also a neglected bike. The previous owner had never changed the air filter. It didn't run as smoothly as I'd like. The gear changes were really clunky. The gear ratios I didn't really like. I didn't really care for the 6-speed. The motor was okay. The V was kind of cool, and it would shake at low speeds. But actually, like, the faster you spun up that motor and you got on the highway, it became extremely smooth. It was a very, very smooth bike. The seat was really comfortable, and it had the upgraded bi-tubo suspension on the rear, and bi-tubo, B-tubo, I don't know. I don't speak Italian. That bike handled really well. I wanted to just keep the speed on every turn. Did not want to downshift or drop a gear. It's a shame. I'm sure if I tried out a newer one, I would enjoy those bikes as well. And it looked beautiful. It looked exactly the part. Spoke wheels, the classic lines, the big tank would be good for touring. But the reason I traded it in was when I wanted to buy things like an air filter or the guy took the reflectors off the forks. It would take 6 months to get the parts in for Moto Guzzi, and everyone that I talked to said Moto Guzzi takes a long time to ship parts. So I said, you know what, this isn't really the bike for me. What is going on here? Anyway, I settled on this Kawasaki. So I guess in conclusion, what is a slow bike? Well, I'll tell you this. There's a video I saw recently about why does a Royal Enfield put a smile on anyone's face when they ride it. And this is my opinion. A Royal Enfield was built to be a motorcycle by people that want to build motorcycles. Bikes nowadays are built by trademark lawyers and copyright lawyers, insurance agencies who are trying to fight with government regulations, and then the corporations trying to fight all the new environmental policies and safety policies that some politician has implemented so they can get reelected. And they're designed by committees. So you've got a committee, a lawyer, a trademark lawyer, an insurance lawyer, government safety and environmental regulations designing bikes now. So that's why when people get on some newer bikes that make insane amounts of horsepower, and they say things like, oh, it has no soul, or it has no character, and it's like, well, you've got this electronic throttle that is fighting giving you any gas or power. Because they're trying to pass, emissions like Volkswagen's Dieselgate and all that nonsense. Whereas bikes in the past were generally just made to be a motorcycle and made to do the thing that they were designed for. Speed or off-road or comfort or fun. a nice sounding exhaust or something. So that's my opinion. I got that idea from my high school music teacher, who told me, there are two types of movies where somebody says, I have an idea, and they make a movie, or the other one where a committee sits down and says, we need to make this movie, and they make a movie. And that applies to everything. And ironically, the CIA had a handbook for saboteurs in World War II, where forming committees to investigate decisions and make the right decision or slow things down was actually how they were suggesting to dismantle the German war machine. And ironically, it's how we live life today. You wonder why life doesn't work. Keep moving up, I can't see. Anyway, we're almost at the cafe, going to the Colombian. It's a good coffee shop in Edmonton. If you're lucky, you'll be there while they're roasting beans. But in my 4 years of going there, I've actually only been there once while they've been roasting beans. So this vlog turns out, and I hope you enjoyed that. And as always, I hope I haven't influenced you to buy anything. Enjoy your slow motorcycles. Slow.